In a cave in South Africa, a scientist named C.K. Brain once matched two neat puncture holes in a fossil skull to the exact spacing of a leopard's teeth. The skull belonged to one of your ancient relatives. It happened almost 2 million years ago. But what you are about to discover is far stranger and far more personal, because that skull is not just a clue about the past, it is a mirror. Somewhere inside you, a memory of that moment still lives, not a memory you can picture. A memory written into your nerves, your instincts, the exact way your stomach drops when something moves in the dark. Imagine the very first time one of your ancestors looked up and saw something twice their size, fur, teeth built for tearing meat, eyes that did not blink away. What did they do? Your body already knows the answer, even if your mind has forgotten it. Let's go back. Not centuries, not even thousands of years, millions. Long before spears, before fire, before language as you know it, early hominins walked the grasslands of Africa as one of many prey species, not the top of anything, not yet. Around them roamed animals that dwarfed them completely. Massive cats related to today's lions and leopards, and even scimitar-toothed cats with jaws built to slice through hide in seconds. Here is the part that rarely makes it into the story. For a long stretch of prehistory, your ancestors were not the hunters. They were the hunted. Fossil evidence backs this up in a way that is hard to argue with. At sites like Swartkrans Cave, researchers have found early hominin bones bearing puncture marks that match the tooth spacing of big cats almost perfectly. Some skulls show holes on the top, consistent with a large eagle carrying its meal to a nest. Your ancestors were, quite literally, on the menu. Try to picture the world they woke up into every single morning. No walls, no locked doors, no streetlights pushing back the dark, just open grassland stretching toward a horizon that could be hiding almost anything. Every sound had to be judged instantly. Was that the wind? Was that footsteps? Was that breathing? There was no version of safe the way you understand it now. Safety was temporary, earned moment by moment, through vigilance shared across an entire group. A single distracted instant could be the difference between a peaceful evening and a genuine catastrophe. That is the environment your instincts were built inside of, not a calm, controlled world. A world where something twice your size could be 70 feet away and completely invisible until it chose to be seen. So picture the scene: a small band of early hominins, maybe a dozen individuals, moving through tall grass at dusk. Then a shape rises from the brush, something enormous, something with a low growl that seems to come from everywhere at once. What would you do? Freeze. That is the honest, unglamorous answer science gives us. Freezing is not weakness. It is a finely tuned survival response, one your body still performs today. When something huge and unfamiliar appears, your nervous system doesn't wait for permission. It locks your muscles for a split second, sharpens your hearing, widens your eyes. Also, your brain has time to figure out whether running, hiding, or standing completely still is the smarter move. That reflex saved lives long before anyone could explain what it was. And here is the twist that changes everything. The ones who froze a beat too long, or who reacted too fast without thinking, generally did not pass on their genes. The ones who survived long enough to raise children were the ones whose bodies made the right call under pressure. Which means, in a very real sense, you are descended from the early humans who got the response right. But that is only the beginning of the story. Because being prey did not just shape how your ancestors reacted, it shaped how they lived together. A lone hominin facing a creature twice their size had almost no chance, but a group had options a lone individual never could. Numbers meant more eyes scanning the horizon, more ears catching a rustle in the grass, more voices that could rise together into a wall of noise, loud and strange enough to make even a confident predator pause and reconsider. This is where something remarkable starts to take shape. Anthropologists studying the pressures of early hominin life have proposed that the constant presence of large predators may have pushed our ancestors toward tighter social bonds, shared vigilance, and cooperative behavior long before anything we would recognize as culture existed. Fear, in other words, may have been one of the quiet architects of human togetherness. Consider what that actually required. Trust. Real, functional trust, built long before anyone had a word for it. A hominin scanning the tree line for danger had to believe the person beside them was doing the same. A parent shielding a child had to know someone else was watching their back in return. None of that happens by accident. It happens because the alternative, facing something twice your size completely alone, was simply too costly to risk. So little by little, staying close to others stopped being just a preference. It became a strategy woven into survival itself, and strategies that keep bodies alive long enough to raise the next generation do not stay small. They spread, sharpen, and eventually become instinct. If you have ever felt your pulse jump at a sudden noise in an empty house, or noticed how much calmer you feel walking somewhere unfamiliar with another person beside you, that is not a coincidence. That is a program written by millions of years spent as prey, still humming quietly in the background of your everyday life. This channel exists for people who feel that connection between the ancient and the ordinary. If this kind of story pulls you in, sticking around means there is more of it waiting for you. Now here is where the story gets harder to look away from. Over time, something shifted. Early humans began doing something almost no other prey species manages. They started fighting back, not with claws or size, but with intelligence and coordination. Sharpened sticks, thrown stones, fire, eventually, which may be one of the single greatest turning points in this entire story. A wall of light and heat that most large predators instinctively avoided. Slowly, painstakingly, across countless generations, the balance of power began to bend. Groups that once could only freeze and hope now had tools that let them stand their ground or drive an approaching predator away entirely. This did not happen overnight, and it did not happen everywhere at once. But piece by piece, the animals that once treated early humans as an easy meal had to start treating them as a genuine risk instead. Think about how strange that reversal really is. For most of your species' timeline, you were the smaller, softer, slower animal in the encounter. And yet here you are now, at the very top of nearly every food chain on the planet, so far removed from that ancient vulnerability that most people never think about it at all. It is worth pausing on just how unusual this makes your species. Almost no other prey animal in the history of life on Earth has managed to flip that relationship so completely. A gazelle does not build fire. A rabbit does not sharpen a stick. Somewhere in that long, uncertain stretch of prehistory, a species that spent generations freezing in tall grass figured out how to change the rules of the game entirely, and then kept changing them, generation after generation, until the descendants of the hunted were writing the rules for everyone else. But your body has not forgotten. That is the part that should genuinely surprise you. The jolt of adrenaline when a large dog barks unexpectedly close. The way a shadow moving in your peripheral vision makes your whole body tense before your conscious mind even registers what you saw. The universal, almost embarrassing reflex to gasp and step back when something large and fast suddenly appears in your path. None of that is random. All of it is inherited. Modern neuroscience actually backs this up. Research led by Joseph Ledouce on the brain's fear circuitry has shown that your amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure buried deep in your brain, can trigger a full-body alarm response before the rational thinking part of your mind has even caught up. In other words, some ancient part of you is still scanning the grass for movement, millions of years after the last scimitar-toothed cat vanished from the earth. And this is where the story gets personal. Every time you feel a flash of fear you cannot fully explain, you are experiencing an echo, a signal passed down, unbroken, from a lineage of ancestors who faced something twice their size and, against long odds, found a way through it. Every generation that reacted well enough to survive handed that exact reflex to the next, and the next, all the way down to you. You did not choose this response. You inherited it, the same way you inherited the shape of your hands or the color of your eyes. It is easy to feel disconnected from a story that happened millions of years ago, on a continent you may never visit, involving creatures that no longer exist. But biology does not work on a human sense of time. It works in unbroken chains. Every single ancestor in your direct line, going back further than any recorded history, managed to survive long enough to have children. Every one of them faced some version of that grassland moment, and every one of them found a way through it. You are not a distant descendant of that story. You are its most recent chapter, still being written. So the next time your heart pounds for no obvious reason, or you feel that prickle on the back of your neck in an unfamiliar place, consider this. You are not overreacting. You are remembering, in the only language your body still speaks. The creatures that once towered over your ancestors are almost entirely gone now, faded into the fossil record and into stories like this one. But the instinct they carved into you is still very much alive, quietly steering you away from danger you have never even seen. That leopard tooth mark on an ancient skull was never just a clue about how one of your ancestors met their end. It was the opening chapter of a much longer story, one about fear turning into cooperation, cooperation turning into intelligence, and intelligence eventually turning the hunted into the hunter. You carry that whole story inside you, whether you have ever noticed it or not. If you have ever felt an unexplained rush of fear and wondered where it really came from, leave a comment and share that moment. And if this changed the way you think about your own instincts, a like helps this story reach someone else who needs to feel it too. Thank you for watching.